Let's jump into our week 11 starts of the week here. We're going to take a look at the running back position first. Dave, give us your running back start of the week.
Right now, I'm going with Devon Singletary, who has a great matchup against Arizona, and we are recording on Thursday morning. We haven't seen Thursday practice reports yet. We will release our episode later today where we kind of dive into Thursday practice reports. But as of yesterday, as of Wednesday, Dameon Pierce still was not practicing, and Devon Singletary saw 31 touches last week without Dameon Pierce in the lineup, scored as many points in that game as Dameon Pierce has posted just once in his entire career. We've talked about it a lot. Pierce just hasn't been that good this year. You look at rushing yards over expectation per attempt. He has the 8th fewest in the league. Meanwhile, Devin Singletary posted a positive metric in his first game as a starter. But what really jumps out to me, and I talked about this on the waiver wire show, is that Devin Singletary is great as a pass blocker. He was inside PFF's 80th percentile last week, and that is going to get him more snaps. More snaps turn into more routes run turn into more targets turn into more receptions turn into more fantasy points. And I think that's what we're going to see as the season progresses. So even if Pierce is active, then I'll bump Singletary down a little bit, but he's going to be inside my top 20 running backs either way. Right now, I've got him ahead of Isaiah Pacheco, who has a really tough matchup against Philadelphia. Got him ahead of James Conner, going up against Houston as we see some of those high-value touches go Kyler Murray's way. Got him ahead of Javonte Williams against Minnesota, who is still kind of in this frustrating committee split. And I've got him ahead of Gus Edwards. Could have egg all over my face with this being a Thursday night game and a lot of people checking this show out tomorrow, but I think we see Keaton Mitchell carve out a bigger role. So it's getting Devin Singletary in my lineups wherever I can.
I'm curious. To me, this is kind of the Eminem thing. Like, will the real Devin Singletary please stand up? We don't know what kind of running back we're going to get here. He's been really just average throughout the season. The Texans haven't been able to run well throughout the season. And then finally he just pops off. But yeah, Arizona's allowed at least 11 running backs to hit at least 12 and a half fantasy points. So if you need a guy to start, Devin
Can,
Singletary is probably your guy.
can we just say that Buffalo is probably the issue? Because this year we are seeing Zach Moss
Right.
look unbelievable in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
We saw Devin Singletary look like a premier back last week. Maybe Buffalo's the issue.
You're the problem, Buffalo. You're the problem,
All
not the
right,
running backs.
let's hear your running back start of the week, because this is a guy who, man, I have been loving him since the offseason. Has a smash spot this week. Talk to us a little bit about Tai Chandler.
Yeah, we fought over Tai Chandler a little bit here, but man, you noticed that I was doing the film study on him yesterday. I posted a bunch of these clips and pictures
I
all over my
graciously
my
allowed
Twitter.
you to take Tai Chandler this week.
Oh, you're such a gentleman. You're such a gentleman. After everyone thinks we now hate each other because of DJ Moore, look at that. We're back to being friends. Yeah, you look at that game that he had last week, and there was a 30-yard touchdown run called back due to a holding call by Brian O'Neill, where it was like the weirdest, dumbest holding call. Like he just ran out there and hugged a corner and didn't do anything. It was typically a traditional hold. He just went out there and didn't even attempt to block, and he wasn't even really that too close to the play. So we're talking about a guy that would have been the RB8 last week had that play stood. He's going up against Denver Broncos, who are allowing an average of 16 and a half fantasy points to the lead running back for NFL teams over the last 6 games. That's since the Miami game. I'm not throwing that in there. I know that a lot of stuff gets skewed because of that crazy Miami game versus Mostert and Achane. So listen, I think that what we're looking at here is Tai Chandler's getting an opportunity. He's got so much more juice than Alexander Madison. So much more juice. That's not very hard, but I think that if you have Tai Chandler on your team, you got him off waivers for a reason. He was available in 99% of leagues, and then that number has jumped up. So if you went and got him, it's because you needed a starting running back. That's what you have this week. That's what you have this week. I'm taking a look at it right now. I've got Tai Chandler as my running back 23 on the week. I think he's projected for roughly around 12 fantasy points.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I mean, we talked about Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, what they did to this Denver defense a little while back. Now, I'm not saying that Ty Chandler is as good as these guys, but Devon Achane and Raheem
Say it, you
Mostert,
coward. Say
they,
it.
I just want to say, they have blazing speed. Like that's what Mostert
Yeah.
and Devon Achane can do, is they can get outside and they can punish you with speed. That's exactly what Ty Chandler's game is. He's not a huge guy. He's not going to slam you between the tackles or anything like that, but he can get outside. Ran a 4.38. I mean, he is just as fast as the fastest running backs in the league. So I understand, with the projections, keeping him around like 11, 12, 13 points, but you start looking at ceiling outcomes for Ty Chandler. He could have a massive, massive game this week.
All right, Dave, give me your wide receiver start of the week. And why is it Garrett Wilson?
I
I
mean,
mean,
this is
shouldn't this be
probably
obvious?
you'd think it would be obvious, and we'll get into some of the deeper guys later in the show. But Garrett Wilson is a guy that I think a lot of people have kind of been concerned about throughout this season. Zach Wilson has been terrible. We talked about this on our rest of season wide receiver ranking show earlier in the week that Garrett Wilson is seeing one of the fewest percentage of catchable targets coming his way than any other wide receiver. But when you are Spider-Man like Garrett Wilson and you have a catch radius the size of a barn door, I don't think it matters. Like, he is just corralling everything that comes his way. And the usage with Zach Wilson has been absurd. He is pulling a 33.5% target share, best among all wide receivers. 45.1% of the air yards are going Garrett Wilson's way. That's second best among all wide receivers. He's sixth in deep targets. He's seventh in red zone targets. So he's getting a lot of targets. He's getting a lot of valuable targets. And I think that's really what it comes down to is he is so talented that it doesn't matter what the targets look like. He's still going to find a way to make plays after the catch. He's still going to find a way to catch uncatchable balls. Looking at this game, Bills are 7-point favorites, meaning the Jets are likely going to be playing from behind. Absolute smash start for me this week. Garrett
Shocker.
Wilson.
The Jets are
Yeah.
playing from behind.
Who'd have thunk it? But yeah, Garrett Wilson, he's inside my top 15 this week, starting him ahead of Debo Samuel, starting him ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Terry McLaurin, and starting him ahead of Devontae Adams, which we can get into a little bit later in the show. But Garrett Wilson, absolute smash start. Love him in DFS, doing whatever I can to get him in my fantasy lineups.
Yeah, you mentioned that he's just been getting targeted a ton. It's not just that he's getting a lot of targets. He's averaging 12 targets per game since week 4, and that leads the NFL. That's actually 2 more targets per game than the next leading targeted
Mhm.
receiver. That's just absolutely bananas. He's the wide receiver 13 in fantasy since week 4. So Garrett Wilson just showing he can do it no matter who the quarterback is. I'm going to give you my wide receiver start of the week. I'm going with Marquise Brown, wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, going up against the Houston Texans this week. And this is the highest point total of the week by Vegas, 48.5 points with the Cardinals going up against the Texans. We've seen the Texans are no longer this slow pace running team that we kind of thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year with a rookie quarterback. They're slinging the ball. CJ Stroud is going out there and forcing other teams to have to throw. And even with Devon Singletary popping off last week, Texans still threw the ball plenty. And so that's what I think we're looking at here with the Arizona Cardinals having Kyler Murray back. It's a very different offense now. It's not the Clayton Tune offense. And go back and look at last week and Marquise Brown, another guy who had a 30-yard touchdown taken away. He's one overthrown ball away from a 14-point performance. Now, that's not
Mhm.
amazing, but we also talked about this. We don't expect Trey McBride to come out there and get another 13-target game. This ball should be spread around a little bit more, especially to a guy like Marquise Brown. So it's I know it's tough. It's tough to trust Marquise Brown right now. He's been outside the top 40 wide receivers in fantasy in 4 of the last 5 weeks. But going up against Houston, they've allowed 9 wide receivers to hit double-digit PPR points. So if there's a guy that I want to bet on and feel comfortable with him being a wide receiver too, even though he hasn't shown me he can do it in recent weeks, this is a new Cardinals team. Kyler
Hey,
Murray's back. I'm trusting Marquise Brown.
you're not getting any pushback from me at all. Marquise Brown is one of my favorite receivers in the league. Most rostered wide receiver among my 500 plus best ball leagues this year. Could not get enough of this guy. And really, what it comes down to is what we saw in college, the connection that Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown displayed. And then we saw that on a very, very tiny sample size last year to start the season. And honestly, I think, we're talking about starts and sits in this episode. But I think Marquise Brown is one of the best buy lows out there right now. I think people are so enamored by Trey McBride. They see the small target share last week. All it's going to take is one boom game for people to start looking at Marquise Brown as a top 15 wide receiver for the rest of the season. So with your trade deadline approaching quickly, Marquise Brown is a guy that I'm trying to get on as many teams as I can.
And a good schedule rest of the year too. So
Yep.
like I'm 100% with you. He is a good buy low candidate right now
Because the
before
Eagles
potentially
in
he
week
pops off.
17, the
Ah,
Eagles have been giving up a lot of fantasy points, and that's who he gets in fantasy championship week.
such a
So
good game.
yeah, I'm looking forward
That
to it.
that could be the big fantasy championship winning game.
Mhm.
That's I want every single piece of that.